before we put that last length of pipe and rod down in the well, we've got to drill our little 1/8 inch bleed hole. Now this is a step that is done only if you live in a cold climate, because we don't want this pipe and pump head to stay full of water because it will freeze. If you're in Florida, you can choose not to drill the 1/8 inch hole. So we're going to drill the 1/8 inch hole. Pull the drill out, wipe away the excess, and now you have your 1/8 inch bleed hole that will make the Bison deep well pump frost free. Okay, now we have all of the pipe and rod installed, and if you did buy the vandal proof kit, I want to show you how that goes together. You've already drilled the holes for the vandal proof kit. We have these little rubber plugs that will now be inserted. So the first thing we got to do is take the rubber plug. John will put a little bit of silicone around that for us, just around that underside edge. Doesn't take very much, just a little bit. This is going to complement the water tightness of the well seal. We don't want any holes. Okay, so I'm just going to take that and I'm going to push it in the hole. There it is. You can leave the excess, that's not going to hurt a thing. Maybe kind of grout it off a little bit. There's your first plug. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Our last step here is to install the Bison deep well head. The first thing we need to do is remove this shoulder bolt that's in the top of the handle. That requires a 3/16 Allen wrench and a 1/2 inch box end wrench. So I suggest that you just install the bolt through the hole just so we don't lose it. Just slide it in there, put it on hand tight. Great. There. Now we're ready to assemble the pump head onto the rod and pipe. This always requires 2 people right here. Somebody to hold just the weight of the pump head and another person to screw the coupling on and tighten the nuts. Now he's tightening up the jam nut with the 1/2 inch and 9/16 inch wrenches. Those are good and solid. So John's going to remove the vice grips. Now I have the weight of the rod in my hands and the pump head. I'm going to lower this down. John will line me up. There, I'm lined up in the pipe. Now I'm going to turn this clockwise to screw the pump head into the piping. I would caution you not to screw it too tight. You've got quite a bit of leverage here. You can hang on to the spout and hang on to the handle. I've got more leverage than John has with the wrench, so I just want to make sure it turns in snug. These threads are cut very tight, so they seal up very nicely. There, now we're all connected. That's as far as we need to go. The next step is to tie the safety ropes on the eye bolt that's underneath the well cap. There's a 1/4 inch eye bolt right underneath the cap. We have 2 ropes in this installation because one of our safety ropes that John's tying right now, that's the submersible, the electric submersible pump. The blue and white rope is our hand pump safety rope. So we'll tie both of those ropes to that 1/4 inch eye bolt. Now that we have our ropes secured, we're going to lift up on the weight of this, remove the paddle, and John's going to push all those wires and ropes down inside the casing. So I'm going to lift the weight. I'm going to remove the paddle, set that down. We're done with that. John will push all of the rope and the wires back down inside. This is a step that you want to do fairly quickly. This isn't too heavy, but sometimes if you've got 10 or 12 lengths, it weighs a little bit more. So the guy holding the pump is going to push the guy pushing the rope a little bit harder. Now, as you lower this down, remember your little rubber bumpers, the little rubber plugs that you put in here. Just go slowly so you don't curl those plugs over. It's pretty tight fit. They will go. The pump is sitting down securely on top of the casing now. You find the holes on the pump, on the truss head bolt, and just turn it in. Keeping in mind, there's no reason to turn hard on this bolt. We just want to snug it up. So I'm going to turn it in there until it comes up against the inside face of the truss head. There it is. Okay, the next step is to reattach the handle to the lift rod. As you're looking at your lift rod, there's a set screw on the back side of this eyelet. Make sure that set screw is pointing towards the handle. That's where we want that. So we're going to take the bolt out. remove that. I'll raise the handle up, line it up with the hole in the eyelet. We're going to push the bolt back through until it bottoms out, and then we're going to attach the nut to the back side. Tighten the bolt, turning the wrench clockwise, just enough so it bottoms out on the side of the handle. Don't tighten it too tight. If you tighten it too tight, you won't be able to move the handle. That reattaches the handle to your lift rod. The next step is to tighten these 4 nuts on top of the well adapter. When you tighten these, there's a plate underneath and there's a gasket between the two. So as we tighten this up, it's going to pull the plate up, it'll squish the gasket on the interior walls of the well casing. That's where we get our watertight well seal. So it's important that we do this diagonally. So we're going to start with this nut. I'm just going to get it started till it starts to show a little resistance. I can do most of it by hand. Okay, now I'm going to go to the one directly opposite from it. That's pretty good. Now we're going to step over to this one. That we can do by hand until we get it down to the top of the plate. Okay, now we're going to go back to where we started. You can notice each time I tighten, one stud rises. That's because we're compressing that gasket. Okay, I'm going to go back to the opposite side again and just keep working my way around the perimeter, going diagonally every time that we want to tighten the nut. Be careful that we don't over tighten these nuts. We don't want to over tighten them. Just get them till they're snug. You'll know that one's tight. That one's tight. We're good. You can tell your pump is good and solid. Okay, the next step after we've tightened the nuts on the top, we're going to tighten up these set screws on the side of the casing. Turn them in by hand until you feel them stop up against the casing. Then with a 3/8 opened end wrench, we're just going to snug those up until they're solid against the casing. Again, going opposite side. So every time we tighten a nut, we want to go diagonal. This is your last step of the installation of your Bison deep well hand pump. In your kit, you will receive this little packet of rubber bumpers. They're a little longer than they need to be. So if you just hold it up against the side of the casing, just mark it with your finger, and with a pair of scissors, you can just trim the piece off like that. And then it just pushes over the head of the bolt, slides on, and there you have it. You can do that to all 4 nuts, and you're done. Now your installation is complete, so we're going to pump some water. You'll notice that your pump comes with this brass cap on the outlet of the spout. Make sure you remove that. So we're going to pump it about 2 or 3 times. You're ready to pump water with your Bison deep well hand pump. One thing to remember, if you're in a cold climate and you've taken your cap off, you're done pumping water, wait 3 or 4 minutes before you put the cap back on. If you put the cap back on too quick, it's going to pull a vacuum and all the water won't drain out of the pipe. So make sure you give it a couple 3 minutes to drain out, then put your cap back on.